That I'm live. So, am I audible? Everybody is so extremely serious. Half the faces are new. So I'm now I am afraid. What to expect in next 3 to 4 hours. So first thing first, welcome to Art and Culture for MMP. My name is Nikhil, and I will be taking your 3 days of life. Secondly, I will try to leave the lecture before 8:30, but it will go 8:30, 8:40 hoga because I've been given only 3 days, and we have to do everything that is required for the exam. So for 3 days, please have, we can give some break in between also, no problem. After 2 hours, we'll have some small break and then we shall continue. For online students who are watching us here, only the first 2 hours will be on YouTube, and then after window shopping is done, we'll go to our portal. The second half of today's lecture will be on the student portal after 7 o'clock. Now coming to today's topic at hand. I have to first of all gauge something about this class before we go on. How many of you are really afraid of art and culture for mains? More than half. How many of you are comfortable about it? There is some gray area in between. Nobody is comfortable. Okay. What is your biggest apprehension about art and culture for mains? Why do you think that it is either not comfortable or difficult? Anybody? No idea? It's a fear of unknown only, or what? I know you very well. Tell me. Okay, so nobody is trying to volunteer. इतना डर है आर्ट एंड कल्चर का. So what I will do is in first 1 hour or so, up to 1.5 hours, we'll discuss the basics, the approach. We'll try to deconstruct the whole idea of what art and culture for mains is, and then we'll go to the thematic preparation one by one. If you look at the question paper, in the last few years, on an average, 3 questions are asked in GS1 for art and culture. In GS1, you have 3 questions on art and culture, 3 on modern, and in 1 or 2 on post independence plus world. This is the general trend. Now, if this is the ratio or this is the weightage that we expect, what to expect within it? Because when we studied culture for prelims, we studied a lot of things. Starting from the prehistoric era till the fall of Mughals, we have studied a lot of things in ancient and medieval history. And if you think of even revising all of that now in 3 days, it is physically impossible even for Chitragupta, right? So the point is, UPSC also doesn't expect you to. What does UPSC expect? We have to unlock its mind for some time before we dive deep into it. The basic key to unlocking UPSC's mind is syllabus. And when we see the syllabus, we actually get more confused. But there are certain key ideas that are clear to us. UPSC syllabus of GS1 has only one line for syllabus. It says salient Indian culture, salient aspects of art forms, literature, and architecture from ancient to modern times. That's all. That's all. What does it exclude? We should be very clear about it. It excludes the political history, जो हम प्री के लिए पढ़ते हैं. It excludes the economic history, explicitly economic history. Implicitly it may come, explicitly it is not there. It excludes the administrative history also. What it includes? Perhaps social history, social change, religion plus philosophy. It also includes culture, visual, etc. Or visual, I would say rather, along with performing arts. They have also mentioned that we have to study language and literature, and then possibly some other miscellaneous points. This is the syllabus of mains. So in the main examination, we do not expect a question directly on any politics, directly and exclusively on only economy. We don't expect a question on the bureaucracy, terms of administration, not at all. That is excluded by UPSC for mains में ancient medieval नहीं है, mains में culture है. It is in prelims, the syllabus is much vast. The prelims syllabus of AMSE is at least 2 to 3 times bigger than that of mains. That should be first clear to you. So even if you want to revise your earlier notes, don't revise every part. In every chapter, at the end of it, we have some art and culture, just revise that. Leave rest of the pages. If you read them, it is fine. You can use them at some point somewhere, perhaps if necessary, but you can avoid that also. Explicitly, a question is not expected. हाँ, कभी UPSC कुछ nobody knows, but as far as their official communication is concerned, this is the syllabus. These things are not in our syllabus directly. Indirectly, they may ask sometimes. Now, if you want to decode these things, इसको कैसे shift करते हैं? को छोटा कैसे करते हैं? Okay, I don't know. Let me change the page. If you want to decode these things, so intellectual history जो होती है, let us look at some of the terms. Intellectual history. It could have religious, it could have philosophical, it could be also scientific. These three things are important. One question is generally expected on one of these three things. In religious evolution, religious ideas, it could be Buddhism, it could be Vedic religion, Bhakti, Sufi, anything. If you come to philosophy, it is very difficult to segregate the two, but they also overlap a lot. But there could be certain purely philosophical questions on sixth school of philosophy, on Vedanta, etc. Then you come to science and tech. Now this trend is going to increase in the coming days. This government at hand at present is very much intending to give a larger scope to something called as IKS, Indian Knowledge Systems. In IKS, you say UGC syllabus aa chuka hai. In NCERT, these things are being have you seen the latest NCERTs? 6th and 7th standard. The latest NCERT of 6th standard came last year. 7th standard came just 1 month ago, 1.5 months ago. In those NCERTs, go beyond social science. History part is there, but if you go beyond social science or beyond history rather, go to geography, go to polity, go to economy, go to science. In all these books, they have implanted culture nuggets. So for next generation or the next year, 2026, a culture teacher will have to scan all the books of all the subjects to find out culture ka kya kya NCERT mein. That is their focus on. In science, for example, they would go on Indian knowledge system. If they introduce geography and astronomy, go back to Bhaskaracharya. So those things are being done in NCERTs now. In some coming months, we may expect the 8th standard NCERT also. I am guessing it will have more of such things. So this IKS, Science and Tech, History of Science and Tech in India, major people and their contributions is an important topic. Then you go to visual arts. In visual arts, again, we have lots of things, typically architecture, sculpture and painting. Architecture, sculpture and painting. In architecture, you have typical artifacts. You may have stupas, caves, temples, etc. We have studied all that for prelims. So I will not go into details here. We'll explain those things as and when we come across the question. Let me lay out the plan for you just now. In case of sculpture, again, you have various kinds of sculpture and technology. It could be, for example, based on raw material, a stone or wood or metal. It could be based on specific famous type of sculpture, Gandhar Buddha or Chola bronze, that kind of questions. And then in case of paintings also, we have two types, on the wall, on the paper. The wall paintings are called murals. They go back to the prehistoric era, come to the historic era, including Ajanta. And when you think of murals, when you think of wall paintings are murals, second is smaller one, the miniatures. And miniature paintings include Mughal painting, Dakhani painting, Rajasthani painting, Pahadi paintings. And then there are many subtypes also. Again, that is all what we have done during the prelims preparation. After that, you have next thing, that is language and literature. Now, this topic we are generally dreaded of this topic. We dread this topic during prelims. पता नहीं कौन सी किताब पूछ ले बुद्धिज्म की. But in mains, don't worry. In the mains, they would be specifically talking about some broad themes. For example, the emergence of vernacular literature, the contribution of Sanskrit literature, or the impact of Bhakti and Sufi on languages of India. Such kind of larger, broader themes are asked in mains, especially this year when 5 languages were put into classical language. That is a very important current affair this time. So Pali, Prakrit, etc. Their literary output, Bangla, Odia, and Marathi. These 5 languages. So Bangla, Marathi, and not Odia, Assamese, right? Assamese, sorry. So we have those languages. We have to look at that a little bit. What is the idea of classical literature, etc. Then we come to performing arts. Performing arts also includes dance, drama, and music. It is one way of looking at it. For performing arts in India, the most important foundational text is Natya Shastra of Bharata Muni, which again is important for 2025. Reason being, it was inscribed in Memory of the World. So we have to be able to write one pager on Natya Shastra and Rasa theory, its importance for India's performing arts. And we'll do that in the class itself. But this, apart from that, if you go by typical European way of studying culture, तो यूरोपियन कल्चर में क्या होता है, यूरोपियन स्टडीज में यू हैव समथिंग कॉल्ड एज क्लासिकल, इवॉल्व्ड, अभिजन, एलीट कल्चर, एंड देन वी हैव फोक, ट्राइबल, कॉमन प्लेस कल्चर. ये बाइनरी होती है. तो क्लासिकल डांस, फोक डांस, क्लासिकल लैंग्वेज, फोक लैंग्वेज, क्लासिकल ड्रामा, फोक ड्रामा, etc. So is this binary true or not? What are the examples? On what basis questions could be asked? In Indian tradition, we don't have such binary. We do have binary, but not this one. In India, in our parampara, the binary is Desi versus Margi. Margi parampara and Desi parampara. So we'll look at those things a little bit also. Not much, little bit. After performing arts, what we have is perhaps miscellaneous topics. Miscellaneous topics. What could they be? They could be education. They could be impact of India on outside Indian culture, could be Silk Road, Indian Ocean, Southeast Asia. This year, Nalanda, Vikramshila are again in news. And we have other such things. So there are many possible topics, but when UPSC gives this syllabus, these things are possibly in the mind of UPSC, apart from very traditional topics like contribution of Krishna Devaraya. या फिर you have the Chola contribution that again falls into these things, architecture, painting, etc. etc. So thematically, these are the main themes. But again, this is just our guess. The better way of trying to understand what is there in UPSC's mind is to go beyond syllabus and look at the PYQs. When you look at the PYQs, we get even more intrigued for multiple reasons. I'll tell you why. Before we come here again, I will show you 2 questions. Look at the questions very carefully and then tell me, do these questions appear same to you? If yes, why? If no, why? The first question is, what are the features of Vijay Nagar art and culture? A very straightforward, simple question. What are the features of art and culture of Vijayanagar Empire? It is not talking about any temple or sculpture as such, overall features. That is one. Now look at the second question. During the Vijayanagar era, During the era of Vijay Nagara, Hampi became the cultural capital of South India. Discuss. During the era of Vijayanagara, Hampi became the cultural capital of South India. Discuss. Hampi is in which state? Thank you. है ना? So, what is the difference in the two questions? The facts required, if you go with the lens of the facts that you have mugged up for prelims, these two questions are almost overlapping. They require a little bit of adjustment, but answer ke main body will contain similar facts. Is it so for the mains? In the mains, would you write almost 90-95% same answer for these two questions? Anybody? No. What is the difference? Outside Hampi. Hampi is the capital city. So, in the first question, you think the first question is a larger question, a broader question, a more general question, because it doesn't focus on Hampi alone. But second question focuses only on Hampi. Okay, this is one interpretation which I had not thought of, but this is possible. Yes. Again, so you are focusing on Hampi. L- Hmm. Okay. Yes, understood. So you are going little bit more analytical, not only what, but also why. And is it the only place? But you are also latched on to the word Hampi. No, today in nowadays when we newspaper with Delhi ne ye kiya, London did that. So Delhi, London doesn't mean Delhi city. It is Indian bureaucracy, Indian foreign establishment. है ना? So Hampi here is also not literally Hampi city. It is the places, mostly Hampi. It could be some other places also. But the capital of Vijayanagar Empire, मतलब विजयनगर patronage की बात हो रही है. The main keyword here is not as much Hampi, but it is actually South India. In the second question, the question is not merely about Vijayanagar Empire. It talks about entire South India in comparison how it was the capital of South India culturally. Matlab within Hampi, you don't even only have the patronage of Vijayanagar rulers. You have actually the contribution of Tamilians, of Telugu people, of Kannadigas. You have to show that. How the idea of Dravidian culture emerged, how it represented the cultural elements of entire region south of India, South India. So यहाँ पे Hampi in connection with different sub-regional parts of peninsula, that is to be shown. Until unless you do that, it is incomplete. For example, what I can say, Vijayanagar architecture, everybody has studied. Temples, everybody knows. Temples have pillars, everybody knows. You connect the pillars of temples in Hampi with the pillars of Pallava, pillars of Cholas who were in Tamil Nadu. And from there, you have to just mention one single line that the pillars that evolved from Pallavas and Cholas onwards were refined and perfected at Hampi temples. Bas. So Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, that to North Karnataka. You have that connection. Now the Vijayanagara Rayas came from the Andhra region. Krishnadeva Raya is also called as Andhra Bhoja. He composed in Sanskrit and Telugu, right? So Telugu region. But the capital is in Karnataka. He is patronizing the Kannada poets also of Haridasa. So Kannada poetry, Telugu poetry, again South India coming together. So the same facts of the culture of Vijayanagar, you have to deconstruct and show how the regionally diverse elements are coming together in one single place of Hampi. Are you understanding what I'm trying to say? This is the part of, this is the second question. The first question does not need to do that. I will not be telling you any additional fact. All the facts that you see in the first question, you just need to interconnect them with different regions, different eras of South. That is all. It is been same facts of pre are to be remolded as per the demand. जो कहते हैं ना टेस्ट सीरीज में, understand demand of the question. This is the demand of the question. ठीक है? So this is one example I wanted to use to open up your mind. Let me go into some more examples. I am ठीक है. Okay. Let us look at one more question that UPSC had asked earlier. Yes, 2023 question. Let me try to decode it for you. Rather, let me take your help to decode this question. Explain the geographical factors towards the development of ancient India. Explain the factors of geography towards the development of ancient India. It's a 10 marker or 15 marker. How would you approach it? Should I write the question here? Explain the geographical factors towards the development of ancient India. It is actually a very simple question because it is the very first chapter of any NCERT of ancient India, which we generally skip the first chapter. आप लोग इतने सीरियस हो ना, मुझे डर लग रहा है. See, psychologically, if you are tensed, the cognitive bandwidth narrows and then creativity comes down. जितना आप स्ट्रेस फ्री रहोगे उतना you will remain creative in the exam hall, which is required for the exam. It is not just absorption and regurgitation of the facts. You have to be an artist and craftsman in the exam while writing the answer. उसके लिए थोड़ा सा एंजाइटी कम कर लो, ठीक है? स्माइल. वरना हमें लाफिंग क्या होता है, वो लाफ्टर क्लब खोलना पड़ेगा यहाँ पे. Anyway, now look at this question. Anybody would want to volunteer about how to approach this question? Yes, please. Okay, Indus River. Let me pick up a color and थोड़ा सा आवाज बढ़ा के. Okay. Okay, Indus River and first urbanization. अच्छा. Iron deposits in Magadha. Okay. Two facts. Okay, yes. Okay. ठीक है. इन माय मदर टंग वी कॉल आदि पोटोबा मा विठोबा. पहले पेट भर जाए फिर भगवान की बात करेंगे, है ना? ठीक है. एनीथिंग मैस्लो हायरार्की? एनीथिंग एल्स? Maritime trade, so coastline. We can have many more points. My endeavor right now is to not to create points. I want to go towards a level beyond that. We'll generate lots of points. We'll teach how to generate points also. But thoda zoom out karke, I want to come at little bit of meta level first. In psychology, we call it metacognition. Cognition and cognition about cognition is called as meta. सोचने के बारे में सोच. So see how it applies here. These are all points of geographic factors. So what these people, two of them, three of them have done unconsciously is they have picked up this word and they have deconstructed this. Which all factors are there? There is a river, there are mineral deposits, there is coastal area, there is monsoon. Let us try to find out the impact of those factors on somewhere in history and culture. That is the approach. Is that the only approach? What else is the approach possible? Anybody else? In a question, generally you will find there are two words, two terms. This is, let us say, a first keyword, that is factors of geography, first keyword. The second keyword is ancient India. The third keyword is the development. Now it is my choice. Dekho, I always say in history and any social science, there is no one single model answer. There are multiple possible, equally valid, equally attractive, equally mark fetching good different model answers. I will give you model answers of all the questions that we discuss. About 30, 40, 50 जितने होंगे दे दूंगा. But I want you to learn and understand this is not the only answer possible. Because in the exam hall we don't reproduce, we recreate. हमें recreate करना है, reproduce नहीं करना. Recreate requires some thinking of template level. So this is the first keyword that is deconstructed. Let us try to deconstruct ancient India. How would you deconstruct it? एक है chronologically. You can go in the, let me use the second color now. Chronological fashion. We know the entire chronology, prehistory, proto-history, and history may you have from Vedic onwards, Janapad, Mahajanpad era, you have the Mauryan era, you have post-Mauryan era, Gupta era, you have 7, 8 main eras. From every era, pick up one example. For example, starting with prehistory, where are they residing? Where they have access to stone to create stone tools or access to shelters. When they are able to improve and when they are not dependent only on stone, but they can create tools out of copper and iron, only then you will see that they can move into the valleys of rivers in the grassland and other places, alluvium plain, etc. Once the agriculture becomes the basis, then the alluvial plain becomes the center of the civilization. Before that, it was never the place. हजारों साल तक, लाखों साल तक, it was never the place. So you then you come to proto history, you can use Indus Valley, you can come to history, you can use any part. You can, it doesn't matter, examples remain the same. Examples will remain the same. It is how you slice your bread in this direction or that direction that matters. Let me take the second example, a third format. The same ancient India I can also deconstruct into spatial manner. What I will do, I'll draw a map of India, simple, in a box, and I will just think of features in different places and I will just give points. I can pick up northwest, you have Khyber Pass, Bengal, you have connection with Southeast Asia, impact of culture. I can go to Deccan, you have the chain of forts and impact on it, impact of it. You go to South India, the coastal region, uska impact on. So you can talk about, we have the Great Ganga Valley, and therefore the Chakravarti empires that require massive resources are created from the basin Ganga Valley only. There are very few instances in which India is united by the people from outside Ganga Valley. There are, but they are statistically less because Ganga Valley creates that much of resources. Or you can talk about the historical battles between Deccan and Peninsula. You have in the past Satavahanas versus Shakas. You have Rashtrakutas versus Cholas. You have Pallavas versus Chalukyas. Vijayanagar versus Bahmani. Same history repeats itself. Why? Because of the alluvial plain between resource. And so you can pick up features from north to south and then talk about it. The same points. And then I can choose to deconstruct not the ancient India either spatially or time wise. I can go to development. Development of what? Development of what? I can talk about development of political, economic, social, cultural, religion. You can bring any dimension. Give one example of politics, one of economy. बचपन से करते आए हम वो UPSC में. This is the, I would not say dumbest, but simplest of all templates that you can follow: political, economic, social, cultural. It comes very handy when we can't think of anything else, right? So the same answer to the same question could be addressed in 4 different structures. One is geographic features, other is spatial, third is chronological, and fourth is dimensional. Examples may by and large repeat, that is fine. But my main concern is, are you able to understand that it can be done? Why? I will inform you in the next question that we'll discuss sometime. मुझे थोड़ा सा आपको दिमाग की खिड़कियां खोलने का काम करना पड़ेगा. for first half an hour, 1 hour before we start dealing with our subject. Otherwise, it becomes impossible. अब तक समझ में आ रहा है? Let me see any doubt online. Rainfall pattern changing. ठीक है, you can example. देखो, my point is, mains में there are two ways of thinking about questions. One is from data to structure. The moment you look at the question, some random facts pop up in our mind. Acha, this river, that mineral, that coast, that rainfall. Now I have to think of arranging this point in some framework. So I first thought of data points and then I put them in some framework to show कि देखो I have logical arguments coming up. Data to structure. जैसे if you come from technical background, we do experiments, we do lot of data points, we try to fit the curve. It's a curve fitting. Data to structure. You can also work other way around. That is from structure to data. What is this? The thing that we did in the other three questions, other three patterns. Here we decided structure will be chronological. From every structure ka subpart, let me think of a data point. My structure will be political, economic, social, cultural. This is my structure. Now let me think of any era. Mauryan ho, Magadhan ho, Gupta ho, doesn't matter. Any point will satisfy. So I have a macro view of structure, then I create points. Now both these forms are the way in which we think. The natural way to think is from data to structure, because the moment we read the question, दो चार fact तो याद आ ही जाते हैं. 2-3 facts immediately pop up in the mind. We think, हाँ, we know everything, we can create an answer. But in a rush to create this kind of answer, there is a possibility that we may sometimes overlook a very major point. But if we decide no, we have to go from structure to data only all the time, it may not be possible. We don't have that time luxury and deep thinking time there in the exam hall to think of structure and then fulfill the quality of structure all the time. So practically what will happen, we have to go for mix and match. Of the 3 questions or maybe of the 20 questions in the GS1, somewhere you will go in this pattern, somewhere in the other pattern. But we should be conscious about what we are doing. The ideal way is the second way, structure to data, where you have a graph, you have a curve, and then you look for the data points as you move along the curve. Ideal way is the second way, but practically 50% questions will come in the first way. Both of them are totally fine. Point is, the more you become conscious about your thinking patterns, better it becomes to draft a more comprehensive answer. Is it fine so far? Okay. Now let us try one more question. A very interesting question. कहाँ पे है? Assess the importance. These are all PYQs. I just am using them as examples to open up the possibilities. Assess the importance of the accounts of the Chinese and Arab travelers accounts of the Chinese and Arab travelers in the reconstruction of history of India. In the reconstruction of history of India. Just take 60 seconds and think about the question. Think about how you would write it in the exam. Pradeep? Hello. Okay, we have some YouTube comment here. Details of architecture, details of religions, details of vocations, of chronology, details of law and order, society, polity, etc. I think you are thinking the same dimensional analysis in this way. I have brought one answer with me. It is a decent answer, a practical answer written by a student where in the exam hall, what could be written? The same question. The life of क्या लिखा है? The life in India in Gupta age and post Gupta age was too prosperous. India at that time was socially, politically, economically something, something, something. So point is what he did, a good thing, is he put the people, the travelers, into context of time and space. Time and space are the bare bones of history and culture anyway. Then importance of accounts of Chinese. So he went for deconstruction. Chinese and Arabs, dono important hai. Let us have two subparts in the main body. That is what we are trained to do. Find the subparts, create the subheadings, and write 1, 2, 3 points of every subheading. So we got the Chinese. We have Fahian and some contribution of Fahian, some travel account and some observations, social observation, etc. Then we go to Yuan Sang, his time period, the source of the book, name of the book, and some other comments. We go to I Ching as well. One comment, good enough. Kitna likhoge? Then we move to Arab travelers. Remembered Al Suleiman and Al Masudi and their observations also in one liner. Itna yaad hota hai hame. Al Suleiman, Al Masudi, and then Abu Ishaq Ali, and finally, greatest of all, Al Beruni. So he has covered lots of travelers and their contribution 1, 2 points each, which seems to be a very comprehensive answer. And both of them have given comments on political, economic, social, etc. And therefore, it was important. How many of you would have followed a similar kind of approach? Most of you, right? Now, is this the answer that is sought by the examiner? Is it even the question that is asked? Look at the question once again. Assess the importance of the accounts of the Chinese and Arab travelers in the reconstruction of history of India. How should it actually have been approached? Yes. So what we need to learn, I'll come perfect point. We need to understand the difference between arguments and facts. We are so far, we have been taught to remember facts as history. Culture में क्या होता है? Facts ही तो होते हैं. But facts are not the arguments, facts are not the answer. Facts are actually those evidences which support the argument. Where is the argument in the answer? Names of the travelers and their observations are the facts. But where is the argument? Where is the assessment of the importance? I come to know political, social things, economic things, cultural things. Okay, is that the assessment? In the assessment, you talk about to what extent and in what way these travelogues are actually important for the recreation of Indian history, and also what are the limitations. So contribution and limitations is the assessment. And we think of contribution. We think of contribution. And then limitations. You make some arguments. Ki what is the significance of this? For example, we already have some Indian resources, Indian evidences, Indian literature, which already gives us some idea of Indian history. We can cross verify that with the idea of history, India, that can be gleaned through such outside observations. So first significance is cross verification. For example, we know Harsha. In Harsha's darbar came Yuan Sang. There was other darbari there. His name was Banabhatta. So Banabhatta tells us something about Harsha. Maybe to some extent we can verify that from what Yuan Sang tells about Harsha. That is called cross verification, corroboration. So corroboration, cross verification is one important contribution. For example, you can talk about any traveler. Apart from that, sometimes we don't have an Indian source where we have a gap, a lacuna. And at that time, if a foreign traveler comes, suddenly he or she, generally travelers ही होते थे जो लिख के छोड़ चुके हैं, he puts a floodlight, throws a floodlight on history of India, which otherwise would have remained unknown to us. So here you can talk about the gaps to be filled where we don't have the Indian literature, Indian source. It could be Al Suleiman Al Masudi in 9th and 10th centuries, where we don't have a contemporary eyewitness account. Sometimes they provide neutral perspective because the Indians who have created massive literature could be biased towards their patron. जो पैसा दे के दरबारी बनाया है उसके खिलाफ कैसे लिखोगे? Yuan Sang would not write against Harsha, but this is the reverse example हो गया. It could go other way also कि इंडिया में कालिदास would not write against his patron. Outsiders maybe like Fahiyan was not patronized by Indian Badshahs, Indian kings, so their observation would be more neutral. It's a possibility. So possibility of less bias. Possibility. It's not a guarantee, but a possibility. Then these observers sometimes, when Yuan Sang Fahiyan came into India or Al Baruni, they are not writing for Indian audience. They're writing for their own home audiences. And while doing so, उनके समझ में तो आए, their home audience should be able to understand what they're writing. So they use examples from their culture to explain our culture. So you have cross-cultural perspectives. Whenever a foreigner comes to a new country and observes, he tries to make it comprehensible to his audience by talking something that they already know. And then in comparison to that, you have something in India. So we have cross-cultural references, comparative aspects. Like Al-Baruni has done that a lot. Al-Baruni has compared the Greek philosophy with Upanishads. Because Greek philosophy was translated into Arabics, Arabs knew about it. So he would say that Upanishad also has similar ideas like the Greeks had. So we have the cross-cultural comparison now. And when these observers go back home, they bring the knowledge of India back home. That leads to cross-fertilization and new ideas being generated. So we have cross-cultural impact also. Not only cross-cultural observation, we have India ka impact bahar kya hua. That also you get to know. So we have cross-cultural comparison was one point, and the other was cross-cultural impact. So this is just a random collection of some important points. But I hope you understand where I'm trying to drive. Now you come to limitations. What would be the limitations? If they don't have the bias because of them being patronized, they may have other bias. They may have tendency to exaggerate something or suppress something because it may be suitable for their culture. It may be very exotic for them, so they would give it more space. So their cross-culture lens also may remove some distortions, but include some other distortions. Right? So that is one possible point, exaggerations and some different kind of bias. Sometimes they have language barriers. Al-Baruni came to India, he spent a couple of years possibly in Banaras, he tried to learn Sanskrit. And he says, I knew 4,000 Sanskrit words, but Sanskrit is much bigger. So he depended on many translators also. He couldn't understand Indian language, but he tried to understand that. Many other travelers, to what extent they did, Al-Masudi, Al-Suleiman, did they learn Indian languages? In Indian language? We have no idea, but it seems they did not. And when you have major language barrier, there also comes in some distortion automatically. It may lead to some misunderstanding also. So this is the assessment of the contribution. Language barrier and therefore possible misunderstanding. You also can understand that they may focus on certain very selective things which interest them. So their books are not supposed to be comprehensive compendium of Indian history. They may see some things which are very much there and they may have decided not to write about them. So we can't rely, they are not exhaustive sources. Something is not in those books does not mean those things did not exist. They are not even supposed to be exhaustive. They are selective. And that selectivism also creates problem for us, because what all we want to know may not be there. So selectivism is also there. Third point, limitation. And then what would be your conclusion then? Yes, they are important with limitations. In conjunction with Indian literature, together they help us to understand our history better. Simple. समझ में आ रहा है कुछ? ऐसे एकदम ऐसे क्यों बैठो यार? This even doesn't require you to remember all the travelers. If you open any notes and start reading travelers की list कि सब रट के बैठो, कुछ फायदा नहीं. It is not required. Culture in mains is easy and difficult because of this. It is easy because you don't need all the facts. Difficult because you need to apply your critical thinking skills, which generally we don't develop much during prelims stage. ठीक है? We know that story of Macaulay. Macaulay, हम मतलब we are all children of Macaulay. I will give one example. What did Macaulay create? A school system, which gradually evolved into becoming today's K-12 system. It's a batch production of children. Assembly line की तरह first standard, second standard, third standard. It's a factory batch production. पूरे बच्चों का हो रहा है. So we are trained to think in certain patterns. The example I like to give every year is this. If I just take your exam for 2 minutes, I give you blank page and some colors and ask you to paint a village. सबका village एक होगा. 3 mountains, 1 small home. On the mountain there are stairs going to some small temple. Then there is river coming. On this side there is well. Some people walking. There is a tree beside the well. And then beyond the mountain in the sky there are 2 crows. Two दो बादल, एक सूरज. This is the village in India. Is supposed to be a country of villages. About 50% people still live in villages, and we don't even know how villages look. We do know them, but we don't observe them. Why is this? हर एक का village same क्यों दिखता है कागज पे? Our creativity is destroyed by our school system. That was the whole idea of Tagore and Gandhi. इससे बाहर निकलो. We refused. इसलिए when you prepare for prelims, it is logical for you. हाँ, we have to remember 500 pages. But when you have to come to mains, 500 पंक्ति नहीं चाहिए. 100 pages are enough, but you should know how to use them. तो जो मैकॉले साहब ने हम पे अत्याचार किए हैं 200 साल से, 190 साल से, I will try to undo them in 3 days now for all of us. Let us see to what extent I succeed. But this is the whole idea. Culture in many, that's why I asked you the first question, how many of you find culture difficult? And if you find it difficult, it is because of this reason. We are not trained to think logically. We are trained to remember and reproduce. Let us try to break that frame. It will come very handy overall also. Is it fine so far? Yes. If you can do that, this question is very good question. What if we have some arguments for which we don't have example? Or what if we have examples and no arguments? So as far as possible, let us try to give examples. As far as I will discuss that in some time. Understand what this example होते क्या? Let's first try to understand that. What are these examples? वो कैसे काम करते हैं? I'll come there. Just give me 2 minutes. Let me see if there are any. Okay. So preparation na. We don't want to do fact-based preparation. We need certain facts, but those facts will be very basic, very limited, and very simple. As I said, hopefully by now you understand difference between the argument and fact. The first answer in the PDF that I showed was factual answer. The one we constructed is a analytical answer. Difference is clear. So as far as possible, we should try to, as far as not every time it will be possible. जहाँ तक हो सके वहाँ तक, our answer should be analytical and fact should come in support. अब इसका फायदा क्या होता है? नुकसान तो मैंने बता दिया. We have to break the Macaulay frame. फायदा क्या होता है? First of all, we don't have to remember difficult facts. In the prelims, that is the problem. In the prelims, we have to go for Abhidnyana Shakuntalam. We need to know all the 5 dramas and poems of Kalidasa. In the mains, you don't. I remember only Meghaduta. Mera kaam, I have to give example, no? I can choose which example to give. As long as it is valid, I will tend to give simplest of the example. Remember, आपका example जितना मुश्किल हो, number नहीं बढ़ते. As long as it is accurate example, tend to go for simplest example, easy to remember, obvious examples. आपका एकदम example में है, example में quality नहीं होती. Don't try to go for a difficult book of some Buddhism. Simplest book. Valid हो, सही हो, simple हो, cognitive load comes down. काम आसान है. आपका culture preparation in prelims was more difficult than this. You need now sing even so, as I said, in your 500 pages of your notes, 300 ऐसे ही छोड़ दो आप. जो 200 बचते हैं, उनमें से भी you have to select which facts you want to remember. एक fact of every type. Go on. That is one. Second thing about the facts I want to mention. तो एक तो मैंने कहा fact versus argument. Second is simple facts. We have the choice. Let us exercise that choice. Nobody is forcing us to add difficult facts. The third thing is diverse facts. Diversity versus multiplicity. I hope you understand the difference. जो आज के दिन में हुआ है on TV news media, we have multiple media, we don't have diverse media. सब जगह की बात होती है. वही पोस्टल चेहरे होते, छोटे झगड़ते रहते हैं. They are not adding any new argument. So we have multiple channels, we don't have diverse channels. Similarly, in our answer, let us, for example, I am being asked to write about the first question, the geographical factors and ancient India. If I write all the facts, all of which are political impact and no social impact, so what is the point? I have added multiple facts, but they are not diverse enough. Number kam aayenge. We need more arguments, but we also need diversity of arguments, typological diversity. That we have to do consciously. We tend to focus in one direction only. That is my third point, multiple versus diverse. The fourth point is reuse the examples. This is also very important. Cognitive load kam kar do. These all things will tell you how culture is easy to prepare for mains. Reusage. You can take single inscription or single coin as a fact, and you can use that fact in one question in type A, in other question in a different manner. For example, the title of some king was some great, grandiose, pompous title. In one example, you can say the kingship was divine. In other, you can say Sanskrit was getting difficult to understand. Third time, you can say religion ka impact on politics. Fourth time, you can say something else. I don't know. The point is the same fact. You can reuse multiple times. So don't try to accumulate lot of facts. When you read and revise, simple facts, minimum facts, multiple usage of facts, the same facts. काम अपने से, the famous example is Punjabi Dhaba. If you go to Punjabi Dhaba, you have a menu card. 50 सब्जियां होती है. Do you really think वहाँ 50 सब्जियां बनती है अंदर? नहीं बन. They have, उनके यहाँ 5 कटोरे होते हैं. The 5 कटोरा have 5 type of curries, and based on मेनू में जो आप ऑर्डर दोगे, A plus B, A plus C, A plus B plus C, it's all mix and permutation combination का गेम होता है वो. The 5 gravies can create 50 sabjis. So every Punjabi dhaba ka chef is a good person at permutation combination of CSAT. It is impossible for him to make so many sabjis. That is how they have created Punjabi cuisine. एक में टमाटर और क्या होता है दूसरा, प्याज की ग्रेवी होगी, एक में कुछ और ग्रेवी, बस इतना ही होता है, घुमा फिरा के पनीर डालो, पनीर निकालो. So this is what we are supposed to do in mains exam. Go with some minimum load, but try to reuse that. So we do not memorize the answer. If you memorize the answer, what will happen? The thing that happened in the first question, Vijay Nagar was the capital of South India. वो difference आप नहीं कर पाओगे. We need to keep some scope of subjectivity in the exam hall. But on the other end, we can't just go randomly. We have to go with, just a metro. If this metro was prepared, you see how it was prepared. They don't bring entire thing ready made, but they don't also make all the concrete here. Precast concrete blocks होते हैं, यहाँ पे आके assemble होते हैं. 5 ग्रेवीज होती है, असेंबल होके 50 सब्जियां बनती है. Similarly, in the mains culture wala part, you have to have some facts. What you need to learn is, depending on the need of the question, how to mix and match them to create an answer. And that is what we shall learn. On the spot, how to create arguments, how to repurpose the facts with, आपको लिखने 3 ही आंसर है ना. You may feel that this is an old fact, let me do something new. But the examiner के लिए आपने 3 ही बार लिखना है, वो 3 questions है. You have enough facts already. So my task is possible to do that in next 3 days, because I will not be teaching primary culture to you. Whatever you have done from whichever source, whichever book, whichever notes, whichever course, for clearing prelims, jitna culture padha hoga, jitna, that is more than enough for us to write the answers. I will try to tap into your facts base and create answers here. That is our agenda for next 2-3 days. Is that clear? Now let me do one more thing, last thing, before we go ahead and start our discussion. And that is to look at the questions. PYQs. What I have done, I think everybody has this handout. सबके पास है? So I have recategorized the same questions 3 times. This is my time pass. है ना? So the first classification is chronological, so that you can trace the trend, how it is evolving. The second classification is chronological arrangement of the questions in history. So you have questions from prehistory, proto-history, questions from ancient India, questions from early medieval era, questions from medieval तो बहुत ही छोटा है. UPSC has not asked Sultanate and Mughal a lot. What they have asked is Bhakti Sufi, except for एक दो example in last 13 years. So we will be doing it very easily also. But the point is, now you know which era is relatively more important statistically, from where questions are being asked, and what are the interconnected themes between them when you look them in this kind of fashion, this kind of chronology. But तीसरा जो categorization है, that is more interesting and more useful for us. We have typologies of question. I have noticed that the best way to understand, to decode the type of question is the third way. इसको मैंने 2 पार्ट में डिवाइड किया है. The first type of questions are something called as descriptive questions, and second type of questions are something called as interpretative questions. Now this is something I need to explain for some time, because it is very important. It is the key to our entire course for next 3 days, and it will help a lot. Let's understand descriptive and interpretative. The moment you look at the question, you should be able to understand what type of question it is. That will help you create the structure of the answer, create appropriate introduction and conclusion. आपका डिमांड कभी गलत नहीं होगा. डिमांड हैज टू बी हिट, मतलब बुल्स आए वहां पे होना चाहिए हमेशा. सो व्हाट आर द डिस्क्रिप्टिव टाइप ऑफ क्वेश्चंस? These are actually first order questions, first level questions, relatively direct questions. These are the questions जो आपने किताब में नोट्स में पढ़े हैं. While doing prelim preparation, you have come across such type of questions and you have found them to be doable. When you see them in the question paper, you will not find it difficult to address. So these are first level, relatively more factual questions. Example लेता हूँ. एक है features of an era or art form. What are the features of Chola temples? What are the features, as हमने देखा, of the explain the features of Vijay Nagar art and culture? Typical features. What are the characteristics of Sangam literature? What are the features of Roman, Gandhar Murtikala. The Gandhar sculpture have the combination or mixture of Greek and Roman elements, features, simple features. ये हमने as it is किताब में पढ़ा है. It requires certain basic understanding. You can reproduce. यहाँ पे you will not go wrong. The second type of descriptive questions are about the dynastic contribution. Dynastic contribution मतलब क्या है? The Mughal patronage to the architecture is great. या फिर the Chalukyan patronage to Kannada language or anything like this. So you take up a dynasty and then overall look at the contribution. The Chola temple architecture was high watermark, etc. So here it's not about some certain art form as such, it's about dynasty which is patronizing that art form. Again, you have seen such questions, similar type of questions, notes में है, रटे हुए है, तुरंत हो जाते हैं. I am not worried about this question, doable है. With some revision, it is doable. The third type of thing in the descriptive is the patronage of individual. Krishnadeva Raya, who was called Abhinav Bhoj or Andhra Bhoj or Hindu Raya Suratrana. Krishnadeva Raya was the great patron of art and culture. Is he the only one? We have a tradition of the great patrons. Rather, in Indian tradition, it is always ऐसे माना जाता है, who is the great king? The king who is not only a great ruler and conqueror and administrator, but the one who is also साहित्य संगीत कला निपुणः. दोनों होना चाहिए, तभी उसका महान मानते हैं. And we have a great tradition of such kings. You go to Harsha, he not only united North India but wrote dramas himself and a great patron also. Dani tha. You go to Krishnadeva Raya. In between, you have Raja Bhoj Parmar of Madhya Pradesh. You have Rana Kumbha if you go to Rajasthan. You have Akbar, Akbar the Great in Mughal era. So you have a series of certain kings, Sat Aat naam hai, who are known as the great patrons, on whom a question, including the one asked in prelims this time, Mahendravarman I of Pallavas. He is also a great patron. He is not only the founder of Pallava dynasty, he created the dynasty. He also started influencing the culture, the literature, the architecture. He also founded the Dravidian art form, architecture ka. The Mahendravarman first is in that league of such kings. Vikramaditya VI of Chalukyas. दरबार में बिल्हण था उसके दरबार में, जिमुतवाहन था. We have such 8-10 राजे हैं, but again these are doable questions, factual questions. So in these three categories of questions, descriptive, batao, X, Y, Z, simple. And if you look at our list of the questions, in the first category, we have such questions asked by UPSC, features of the art form or dynasty contribution or individual patron. Ashok was Mahan because of 1, 2, 3. Kanishka was a great patron of Buddhism. Likho. Direct questions. यहाँ पे difficulty नहीं है. Had UPSC been asking these questions, you would have found culture very easy. But more than 50% questions are in the second category, and that category is called as interpretative category. And this is a second level question. This is more analytical. यहाँ पे you need thinking. यहाँ पे you need mixing of the gravy to create the subject that is being demanded. Because nobody will directly ask for direct gravy. यहाँ पे combination ही चाहिए. और किस किस्म का तो what I have done, I have taken some effort to sub-categorize it into 4 or 5 types. So that understanding becomes, जैसे यहाँ पे 3 types हैं, यहाँ 4-5 types हैं. So that I open it up for you. You have to, when you look at the question, you should first be thinking, is it descriptive or interpretative? If it is interpretative, of what type? That will make it easy for you to create the structure of the answer. So what are the subtypes of interpretative? The first subtype which we just saw, the significance. What is the significance of something? हमने अभी देखा. Assess the importance. Assess the importance. हमारी गाड़ी फंस गई. We thought that Chinese and Arab travelers वाला question is descriptive type. Well, it was not. It was interpretative type. तो हमारा थोड़ा सा निशाना चूक गया. Right? So assess the importance or what is the significance. Now this question can be extended to include two more things. एक होता है legacy type का. What is the contribution of Vedic culture to today's India? बताओ. So आता है present linkages, present relevance. It is a subtype of significance only. The ideas of Guru Nanak are very important for 21st century. जोड़ दो दोनों को. Buddhism is timeless in that it created the ideas which still have resonance in the to tackle the problems of 21st century. So question doesn't remain only about Buddhism, it is about connecting. So linkages, connectivity, that is very important. So it can be about present linkage, जैसे कि UPSC asked the question Harappan urbanization and present problems of cities in India. जोड़ो. It is never about Harappa, it's about present. So they can either explicitly ask you what is the present relevance in 21st century, or they can ask you what is the overall significance, overall contribution. So what is the contribution of Vedic literature or Vedic religion to India? When it says to India, it does not mean only 21st century India. It can mean any point of time. तो आपके पास और थोड़ा फ्रीडम बढ़ जाता है आंसर लिखने का. So is it present relevance, current relevance, modern era, 21st century, or overall significance? So यहाँ पे एक category, this requires to walk you one step ahead of the facts you see in your notes. Now you will understand why I don't like the book somebody has written for culture. ठीक है, because that book is only and only for prelims, not for mains at all. You go to next category, evolution. This is at the heart of history. Change and continuity. Change and continuity. These type of questions are also extremely important. UPSC asked question that while the Western civilizations have disappeared, India has survived. यूनान मिस्र रोमा सब मिट गए जहां से, अब तक मगर है बाकी नामो निशा हमारा, सारे जहां से अच्छा हिंदुस्तान हमारा. That stanza was literally translated by UPSC and made into question कि why do we continue, उसका बताओ कुछ बारे में. या फिर you can say कि Hadappans, they may have declined but they did not disappear, they continued to influence the later era. Difference of religion, early Vedic and later Vedic, difference of religion between Upanishad and Buddhism, change and continuity. So we have to, Puranas were composed to carry forward the Vedic idea. Buddhism not only opposed the Vedic idea but also was a child of Upanishads. What is continuing, what is changing. तो हमने किताब में क्या पढ़ा है? We read chapters in silos. Vedic era is over, then we come to Janpad era, Mahajanpad era. Then we go to later era. Likewise. But we study Puranas कहाँ पे? In the chapter of Gupta. We study Vedic era कहाँ पे? In Vedic chapter. The question is, Puranas are carrying forward Vedic tradition. Discuss. So this is the linkage. Harappan religion and Vedic religion same है कि फर्क है? So this is about change and continuity type of questions. They are also second type of interpretive question. यहाँ पे you have to go one step beyond into present context possibly. Here you also have to go to one step. You also have to go one step beyond, but you compare two different parts. Like for example, I'll give best example. Trace the evolution of rock cut architecture from Barabar to Kailas. 10 marker. What we will do? We'll end up writing Acha Barabar cave is the first cave. Then maybe Satavahan era caves. Finally Ajanta and then Kailas. So I have got 4 points. Let us write the features. This is what we naturally will do. But again it will become descriptive. लिखना क्या है हमें? Interpretative. To find certain dimensions. How the plan or layout is changing. How different types of rocks are being used. Different locations. What are the type of murtis? How are they evolving? What about the gavaksha or the facade? What about the pillar? Can they talk about something about it? Some things may not have changed. The जो लोमस ऋषि का गवाक्ष है, that continued throughout the history of India. It never changed. So there is change. There is also continuity. So you have to, again, same facts, but उनको आपको remold करना पड़ता है. So gravy is to be mixed. Next category of questions in interpretative style is the one where you have comparison, open comparison. For example, UPSC asked a question on Gupta Empire and Chola Empire have great contribution to architecture of India. पूछा था UPSC ने, याद है आपको? हेलो, गर्मी हो रही है क्या? क्या हुआ, सर्दी लग रही है? सुबह से बहुत पढ़ लिया क्या आपने आज? चलो ठीक है. I am not going to pump you up with a lot of jokes. ठीक है, don't expect that out of me. I have only 3 days. Every second is important. So we'll focus on hardcore studies. वो आप देख लो यार, मुझे ऐसी गर्मी हो रही है, यहाँ से इतनी गर्मी आती है. आपको मतलब ठंडी चाहिए, गर्मी चाहिए, तो यहाँ के बैठो ना, एसी के नीचे क्यों बैठ रहे हो, थोड़ा यहाँ पे आ जाओ, क्योंकि वो देखो हवा एग्जैक्टली आपके ऊपर आ रही है. अरे यहाँ पे आ जाओ. ठीक है, एनी अदर प्रॉब्लम? चलो, everybody understands Hindi, or I should be strictly speaking only and only in English? इसका भी जवाब नहीं दे रहे. हेलो, my name is Nikhil. You are sitting in Delhi, which is India's capital. शाम के 6:15 बजे है, आज के समाचार शुरू होंगे. कुछ तो रिस्पॉन्ड करो मेरे. Anyway, comparison, Gupta and Chola, Fahian and Yuan Sang are important. Let us take this Fahian Yuan Sang question. UPSC asked a question, controversial Fahian Yuan Sang. When you write Fahian Yuan Sang, both of them are important, no doubt. They have left behind the literature that it is very essential to understand India of that era. But we tend to confuse. यार ये फैक्ट जो थी फाहियान की थी, यूएन सांग की थी, एंड देन वी खुद को गाल यार मैं रटा नहीं ठीक से. It's not about memorization, it's about concept. Fahian came in the era of Gupta, Yuan Sang came in the era of Harsha. That is basic, that we know. UPSC asked in prelims also this time. But the point is, so what? Why is UPSC asking you Fahian versus Yuan Sang only and not Fahian versus I Ching, Yuan Sang versus I Ching versus Yoncho? Yoncho was a Korean person who came to India in the next century. We have a lot of people coming, writing about it. Why Fahian Yuan Sang alone? The reason being, Fahian comes to India at the time of the golden age of India, the Gupta Empire. Yuan Sang comes at the time when Guptas are gone. India is disintegrated, the decline has started. So whatever facts you choose to write in the answer, you have to ultimately indicate through the facts you chose to write in Fahian that it was somewhat a prosperous era. To contrast it with the description of Yuan Sang, where you see a noticeable decline of politics, of Buddhism, and of overall culture. Thoda thoda. If you are not able to draw that conclusion that Fahian means prosperity, Yuan Sang means some perceptible beginning of decline. This is the argument. Facts जो कुछ डालो क्या फर्क पड़ता है. Next thing, Fahian never talks about politics. Fahian has not even mentioned the name of the king in whose era he visited India. Yuan Sang Bhaiya, he has got access to all the major courts in India. He spends time with Harsha, he spends with time with the court in the court of Pallavas in Kanchipuram. He has a letter of recommendation from Harsha कि दुनिया में तुम देश में जहां भी जाओ हर दरबार में तुम्हें एंट्री मिलेगी, मेरा लेटर ऑफ रिकमेंडेशन है. Yuan Sang did that. He roamed across India. So geographically, Yuan Sang has seen a lot of India, and he has given keen political, economic and social observations. Fahian ने नहीं दिए. Fahian is more concerned religion, translation, culture. Whatever political observations come, they are very remote, very passing, very inadequate. So ये तीन चीजें हैं. Fahian represents prosperous era, Yuan Sang start of decline. Fahian does not talk about politics. Yuan Sang talks a lot about it. Fahian does not talk about entire India. Yuan Sang has gone everywhere in India. ये हो गए आपके पर्सपेक्टिव वाले पॉइंट. To justify these points, you can add a fact, social, religious, आपकी इच्छा. किताबें तो बड़ी बतेरी उनकी है, उसमें बहुत कुछ लिखा हुआ है, जो याद है लिख दो. I am not interested in a particular fact. As long as your fact that you chose to remember and write is valid, I am fine. Facts का load मत लो. But this is my point of comparison. Comparison. Then there are two more things, 4 and 5th. They are most important, and generally they are conceived as most difficult. One is something called as causation. Causation. अब ये क्या है? The impact of Buddhism on visual arts. बताओ. Visual arts like stupa with its architecture and sculpture and design etc. embodies Buddhist ideas. Explain. So idea क्या है? So there, the theme क्या है? Some idea leading to some physical form, and how the physical form is representing those ideas. It can be philosophy affects एक जो simple, I always tell that in class also. There is a great Hindi poet called Ramdhari Singh Dinkar. Dinkar Saab, I have a book over here. He wrote a book called Sanskriti के 4 अध्याय. In that book, he has written a statement: कला धर्म की दासी होती है. The art is the slave of religion, especially in India. So that is what the question is. How Buddhism influenced architecture, how Puranic religion has influenced the temple architecture, how the ideas of India and the West mixing up Hellenistic ideas have influenced sculpture, etc. So from the ideas to art. Idea could be philosophical, could be religious, could be anything. Emergence of Mahayana and emergence of Gandhar sculpture. Gandhar sculpture would not of Buddha would not have arisen or arose without emergence of Mahayana school. So Mahayana school is idea. Gandhar Murti is its visual form. So you should be able to show the interlinkage. In the Gupta era, the Puranas are getting recompiled, and that idea creates the Gupta era temple architecture. So ideas. So this is the interlinkage of causation. But ये जो है, even for example Bhakti movement influenced literature, language development in India. जितनी भाषा आपकी हमारी है, our vernaculars are today shaped by Bhakti movement of saints in every region. बंगाली हो, उड़िया हो, तमिल हो, मराठी हो, राजस्थानी, हिंदी, संत नहीं होते, हमारी भाषा नहीं होती. Simple. So Bhakti Andolan, Bhakti movement has not only social context, it has linguistic, literary impact. This is ideas to some art form, right? This is one type of question. It goes in reverse way also. Reverse way. वो reverse way क्या है? It is called as let me call representation. Questions of representation. It's a reverse of causation. UPSC sometimes ask you, look at the sculpture and tell me about society. So I am not being asked the features of sculpture. Tell me the features of temple architecture. ये question हो गया of this type, descriptive. The ideas of Puranic religion influence temple architecture. This is category 4. And from temple sculpture, what can I glean about contemporary society? That is the representation. वहाँ पे औरतों की मूर्तियाँ कैसी है? Their clothing, their hairdo, their fashion. Does it tell me something about the contemporary society? Their ornaments. If I go to Ajanta paintings, what I can see the textile. What does it tell me about the art form of that era? So from these sculptures, Mughal paintings, what idea do you get about the gender and caste of the medieval time from Mughal paintings? तो रिवर्स में जाना है. From the visual art form, what can you reconstruct? Or Sangam literature is good enough to tell me about the Sangam economy, Sangam society. So from literature, I go backwards. So this is reverse reconstruction. This is the reconstruction, this reverse of causation. So we call it representation. How the society, economy, culture, etc. is represented in the art form or literature as now we see it. तो यहाँ पे हमें उल्टा जाना पड़ता है, from the art form to society or culture or economy or something. ये क्वेश्चन जो कैटेगरी 4, कैटेगरी 5, I teach a lot about it in the classes, but I have seen that this is found to be a very difficult part, because while we study culture, we study it as a set of facts. But असली कल्चर का दम जो है वो इसमें है. UPSC is asking such questions. So I don't know how to reduce it in size, but yes, I know. Okay. So these are the types of questions about which we should be aware. With this lens, I think we should proceed further with our lectures. Is it clear so far? Yes. क्योंकि आपने मेरा क्लास नहीं किया. I'm joking, but this is unfortunate situation. Overall, people see UPSC is very clever, very smart. These are the hidden types of questions which actually are existing questions in academia. जैसे iconography is a subject in academia. UPSC ने एक बार सवाल पूछ के छोड़ दिया. Right? So ये syllabus में this is representation is a field. I have not created this for representation. It is there in, if you go to DU, if you go to BHU, if you go to Jaipur University at masters and above level, these topics are there. Etiology hai, lots of things are there. My point is that we don't study that because UPSC has not explicitly talked about it. But if you study those things and then you come back here, now you go home and read the textbook. You will see all these things. बस चश्मा आपने नहीं पहना था, मैंने पहना दिया. Right? So इतनी बात है थोड़ी सी. Not satisfied. कौन सा वाला? देखेंगे ना, हम जाएंगे वहां पे. We'll do all of the. I just want to open up the canvas to you right now. We'll fill all the colors in next 2.5 days. ठीक है? Anything else? Did I answer your question? पक्का? Okay. As far as possible, आप facts लिखो. If you don't have one fact, कोई बात नहीं, लिख दो. There is no option. If you don't know something, you don't know. You can't create, right? It's not very bad. You will not get 0. Maybe out of 10, if you put it into this category, you would get 5 or 6. You get 2 or 3 here. The facts are still the same, no? But you just put the facts in different perspective. So you'll get some numbers for sure. Maybe half the numbers of which ideally you should get. Okay? Yes. Arab. Al-Baruni is actually last of the great tradition of that. Arab, right? Actually, हुआ ये है, in the 9th and 10th century, 8th, 9th, 10th century, there was the great Caliphate of Abbasid. The Abbasid age, before the rise of Turks, the Abbasid age is actually the golden age of Islam, where they absorbed not only the Indian culture from Sindh, etc. A lot of Sanskrit books were translated into Arabic, but also a lot of Greek and Old Persian and Egyptian, etc. So it was a very, we have the very famous, वो कौन से राजा थे, हारून अल रशीद वगैरह, एंड द लाइब्रेरी ऑफ बगदाद. सिर्फ नालंदा नहीं जली है दुनिया में, लाइब्रेरी ऑफ बगदाद भी जली हुई है पूरी, बाद में जलाई गई वो. ठीक है, व्हेन मंगोल्स केम एंड डिस्ट्रॉयड ऑल दिस थिंग्स. सो हिस्ट्री में वो मतलब अब्बासिद एरा इज ग्रेट कल्चरल एरा व्हेन यू सी अ डिफरेंट काइंड ऑफ इस्लाम. इस्लाम में प्रॉब्लम कहाँ पे आता है? फ्रॉम द 10th century onwards, when the rationalist people were defeated, which are called as Mutazila, and there was the rise of Turks. The Turks gradually became Muslims, and the Turks came from Central Asia. They were very ferocious, very aggressive, very militarized, very violent. वो इतिहास अलग है, और प्री टर्किश इस्लाम का इतिहास अलग है. Unfortunately for India, In North India, the experience is only when the Turks became Muslim and then they established Delhi Sultanate. तो वो एक अलग किस्म का इतिहास हमें दिखाई दिया. खैर, but so Al-Biruni comes in that context. He's the last of that great age. Yes. पर्शियनाइज्ड लोग है ये. अब चलो आपको कितना इतिहास बताए, समय है तो तुम ले लो आपका. एनीबडी, एवरीबडी इज फाइन. वैसे इट इज नॉट अबाउट व्हाट वी आर टीचिंग, बट बिकॉज यू आस्क क्वेश्चन आई विल टेक अ डिटूर ऑफ 2-4 minutes. Islam arose in Arabian Peninsula in 7th century, 620s, 630s, 640s. At that time, these were tribes. It was a tribal religion to begin with. The political structure that was recommended also was tribal. It suited the trading tribals in that region on the part of international trade routes. Very soon it expanded very fast. After Muhammad Paigambar, we have 4 Rashidun Khalifa, then Umayyad, then Abbasid. From Morocco and Spain till Sindh, entire area was captured. The main region that came in the control of this Umayyad and Abbasid was Persia. Persia was a great civilization of thousands of years old. But after conquest by Arabs, it started to become Islamic. It converted to Islam. उसमें हुआ ये कि Persians had great civilization, great tradition of monarchy, settled civilization with great cities and all divine monarchy, सब कुछ था उनके पास. So the model that was evolved by the Arabs in the first 100 years of political structure, where you have one Khalifa who who is the head of both politics and religion, was found unsuitable for governing Persia. So Persian cultural elements, although Persia became Muslim, उनके पुराने cultural elements सारे absorb होके नया मॉडल बना इस्लामिक पावर का, किंगशिप का. Now we have Persian idea and we have the Arab idea. Persia, क्योंकि it was a high culture, so it became the idea of religion, not religion, the idea of literature and culture, etc., and political language. Then in the third phase, we have the Turks, which come from Central Asia. They come one side in Afghanistan, other side in what today we call as Turkey. तो दिल्ली सल्तनत एंड वो सेल्जुक टर्क्स, वो साथ में बनते हैं दोनों. दीज आर द टर्क्स हु ट्राई टू चैलेंज द मोनोपोली ऑफ खलीफा. ये कहते कि भाई यू कंटिन्यू टू रिमेन रिलीजियस हेड बट वी आर द पॉलिटिकल वॉरलॉर्ड्स. सो द खलीफा इंस्टीट्यूशन ब्रेक्स at that point of time. So we have culturally Persianized people but carrying the tradition of old Arab. ये जो बीच वाला संधि, इट्स इंटररेग्नम कहो उसको, उस समय आता है आपके पास अल-बरूनी. सो हाई कल्चर स्टिल अरेबिक, पर्शिया में शाहनामा है, वो सब है. ये पर्शियनाइजिंग शुरुआत हो रही है. ठीक है, लेट अस ट्राई टू रिस्ट्रिक्ट योर सिलेबस नाउ. एनी अदर डाउट? लेट मी सी ऑनलाइन. ठीक है, so I think we should take a break for 5-10 minutes. The YouTube session will come to an end, and all those students who are watching online, please log into our portal. We'll continue henceforth on student portal. It is 8:30. We'll start by 8:40. 18 मतलब 6:30. It is will start by 6:40. 10 मिनट ब्रेक ले लो, हम सेशन ऑनलाइन शुरू करते हैं पोर्टल पे. चलो, थैंक यू.